What's up, everybody? This is Brett here, coming at you with a 2v2 game. This is a multiplayer match that I did in Total War Warhammer 2. When I joined this match, our opponents had already picked. They were the High Elves and the Empire, and my ally had already picked the von Karsteins. Now, he went ahead and went with Isabella von Karstein and his lord, so I decided to keep it loreful and go with Vlad von Karstein. Now, in the campaigns, whenever you have both of these two lords on the field, they actually receive melee attack buffs and I believe a weapon strength buff whenever they're fighting together. I don't think that's the case here in multiplayer, but we'll see. We'll actually look at their unit cards and see if that's buffs that they receive. Now, we both went with very standard, kind of well-rounded vampire counts builds. I picked my build in a way that would complement his, since he had already completed building his army by the time I joined the game. Our opponents went with a very cheesy anti-vampire army. I don't blame them, and from their perspective this is probably pretty fun. However, it kind of lowered the skill level of this game. They went with a complete front line of Empire Flagellants. Let's go ahead and put this in slow-mo so you can see these guys kind of in action. Front line of Flagellants. These guys are unbreakable. They are pretty heavy hitting damage dealers, but with low armor and actually no armor, they actually will take a beating. But that's kind of what they're there for. They also grabbed a few cavalry units, Reichsguard, heavy armor, and Demigryphs with halberds, just in case we went for heavy cav. And if you haven't seen those units before, they're pretty awesome models. Basically knights riding wingless griffins. And their lore choice is Volkmar the Grim on his war altar. He has lots of really strong AoE abilities, and our opponent actually took them. You'll notice on his unit card down there he has Banishment, which can really destroy vampire counts if you blob up. He also has his regen, which makes him very strong, and he's just going to ride through vampire count units. And he also took a Empire Captain, which is a little bit unnecessary. Maybe he just had extra funds, but the Empire Captain actually provides an encouragement aura which the Flagellants don't need because they are in fact unbreakable. Now, the High Elf opponent, and this is where the cheese really comes in, is they took a complete army of Sisters of Avalorn, who are probably the strongest archer unit in the game. They have huge range at 180. They also do magic and fire damage. You'll see next to the ammunition tip, you'll see a little fireball symbol, a little kind of bluish magic symbol. That counters the regeneration that the vampire counts receive. It also allows them to really damage ethereal units, such as the Mortis engine that I brought. And they also took 2 artillery pieces, the Eagle Claw bolt throwers, which I will be looking to shut down as soon as possible with my Fellbats and my cavalry. With the healer, they went with a very good choice in Alariel the Radiant. She provides tons of healing, and she will be able to keep up this Empire front line, hopefully for the opponent, long enough that the Sisters of Avalorn can really do their work. Now, we're already taking Eagle Claw bolt thrower fire, so we're going to have to advance. There's nothing to it but to advance. They actually also have the high ground. I kind of had the feeling our opponents had been playing this map with this combo for a while, so maybe they were trying to get some teamwork built up. They were practicing their synergies. I am going to send out my flanking units. You'll see here I took a group of Blood Knights, the best cavalry that the vampires have. They are anti-large, armored and shielded, and they have frenzy. And I like to use them in conjunction with the Dire Pack. They are a lightly armored, very fast moving war beast unit that also has anti-large. So they're really good at getting into lightly armored targets like the Sisters of Avalorn, but if they have to stand and fight against these Reichsguard or these Demigryph Knights, they actually do very well, especially against the Demigryph Knights who are anti-large. They actually won't get that bonus versus large, seeing as how these guys are small units, in fact. And we're going to be moving our Felbats around. I'm being very careful to strafe away from the Sisters of Avalorn's range. And if I go ahead and put that on full speed for you, you'll see these guys are starting to melt my allies' front lines. He has Crypt Ghouls, Grave Guard. These are kind of who we wish they were shooting at. They have silver shields, which provide a lot of damage resistance against all of this fire, whereas these Crypt Ghouls are just going to get melted, and they absolutely do. Our ally was not being as careful as I was to keep their squishier, more high-value targets away from this fire, and he did go ahead and engage these Demigryph Knights with a Terrorgeist, a White King, and Felbats. Not a very good engagement. These guys will do excellent damage versus large, and 2 of those units there are large. We're kind of taking a more circumspect route. We're going to go around, force him to turn his archers towards us. Our front line is shielded. We have the Sternsmen, a Regiment of Renown, very powerful Graveguard unit that has an innate regen, so they're usually the last guys on the battlefield. We also have 2 other Graveguards flanking them. We took quite a few zombies expecting lots of archer or artillery play. We went ahead and wrapped up these Reichsguard. I saw this as a really favorable engagement, and to stop these Sisters of Avalorn from firing into us, we're going to send these Felbats in and use our other Felbats to go ahead and muck up these artillery pieces. Our front lines are engaging. Another thing I did bring this game is I brought a Necromancer fully stripped down with just the Forbidden Rod. You'll see here he's got it popped to increase my Winds of Magic. I brought Winds of Death on Vlad. That's not a spell you commonly see. A lot of times you want to strip down your Vampire Lords with just Invocation of Mehek to heal. You want to give them maybe Raise Dead to summon zombies and skeletons onto archers, and maybe one other spell. If you're using Manfred, you'll have access to the Lore of Death, so you'll want to use maybe Fate of Una or Spirit Leech to deal damage. Here I get a nice Wind of Death down these 2 Sisters of Avalorn. Now I was somewhat disappointed with Wind of Death. I know they nerfed it by increasing its cost, and for the amount of Winds of Magic that I spent casting 2 of these this game, I could have got a lot of heals off in my front line or my allies' front line, and they just didn't do the work. Basically, for 2 Winds of Death, I barely was able to take 2 Sisters of Avalorn offline. So we're blobbing up. We're making several different blobs that really could have benefited from our heal. This unit here does AoE healing for our units, and it does a life-draining aura against our enemies' units. And I had to keep this back most of the game. I was very concerned that our opponent would just turn his Sisters of Avalorn and just nuke this. This is an ethereal unit. Actually, I'm not sure if it doesn't count as an ethereal unit, but it does take extra damage from magic attacks, I do believe. Either way, these Sisters of Avalorn could just turn 2 or 3 units at once and nearly one-shot this unit. So as much as I want to get this into my main line, I'm actually not able to, just for fear of having that destroyed. Our Vargulf here, an excellent anti-infantry unit, is going to get into these Sisters, and in melee these Sisters don't have much chance against him. Vlad running around doing work. He's already at 56 kills. Very good. Our opponent kind of lost that flank. They engaged a bit early, and they took quite a few bad fights. And once you start to lose an army on one side in a 2v2, our opponent was able to then have the freedom to turn all of these archers on me. So we really needed our opponent to hold, and basically they have nothing left. They're just fighting with Isabella, who's a very tanky combatant. She can keep herself alive for a long time, but she's not going to do a ton of damage. So here we're trying to get our front line, which has collapsed these flagellants, and we're trying to move them around and into the back line where the Sisters of Avalon are hiding. Skeleton Spearmen ended up not being much use this game because our opponents decided not to take almost any large units. Blood Knights did great work against these Demigryphs and the Reichsguard that are out here. We lost our Dire Pack, who were there basically to sponge damage for them, but they did do their job. Sporadically throughout this fight we were able to give them heals. Here you'll see our Mortis engine took a volley or two and nearly got destroyed. Our opponent's unbreakable line really paying off. Despite the quality of our front line being higher in these graveyards, we're still not able to break through. Even a single flagellant can hold up an entire unit. Our opponent getting a great rear charge with Volkmar, popping his AoE ability that does do damage and also provides a magic resistance buff. So if we were trying to cast a spell at the same time, maybe a Wind of Death down this line here, and he popped that first, it would provide magic resistance to those units in that AoE. Opponent still fighting, still summoning zombies with Isabella, trying to help me in some way, but in 2v2s it's very difficult. When one player gets buckled very early on, there's usually not much the other player can do. And a banishment went down here. Let's see how many kills Volkmar has. 430. So yeah, Volkmar did tons of work. That was probably his second banishment. We might have missed one go off on our opponent's front line near the beginning of this. Our opponent's Empire Captain, seriously injured but not out. We're using some of our units to try and chase down these Sisters of Avalon. Unfortunately, due to the number of Sisters of Avalon, the fact that our opponents, cheesed us a bit, they have enough of them to run one unit away while one of our units chase, and then have another unit sit here and pick us apart while we have our backs turned and our shields are ineffective. See here, this is the corpse of our allies, Vargeist, and their Terrorgeist, which they lost in this kind of rough early engagement they decided to take against anti-large Demigryph cavalry. Vlad here is just in this giant pit, smacking people around. He is extremely difficult to take down. I did take all of his different regen buffs. I took his ring. It's a unique item that gives him a 90% ward buff. And you'll see here I popped it because I am near my healing cap. And you'll see a healing cap is denoted by this line here. Vlad, in almost every fight you take him in, he'll reach his healing cap. And I've summoned some zombies to help him sponge some of this damage off these flagellants. He almost always reaches his healing cap because of the insane amount of regen that he does have. And by doing, our opponent actually tried to buff us by using the Dance Macabre. Not sure, it's a little too late at this point. But once I reach that healing cap, the 90% ward buff kicks in, and it'll prevent me from taking that really heavy permanent damage. Now Vlad, if he had unlimited leadership, if we still had some units on the field, he could probably honestly tank through almost all of this chaff, but then he would still have to fight Volkmar, he would still have to fight Alariel and an injured Empire Captain, and take just a ton of focus fire. There's no way to do it, but he would probably come out of it with another 100 or so kills. In the meantime, we've just been constantly remembering to use our Necromancer's Forbidden Rod to increase our Winds of Magic to try and get off as many zombie summons as we can at this point. It's a very cheap spammable spell, and you'll see here his leadership tanks, goes all the way down, and he's going to start suffering army losses, and he's going to start crumbling rapidly losing HP, and that's going to be the game. So it was a fun one. I decided to cast this one because of my love of loreful battles. These are definitely two quote-unquote good factions versus the vampires quote-unquote evil factions, and I loved having Vlad and Isabella in the same match. So that is going to be it. Their empire is just cleaning up the last of the zombies, and that is going to be that. So thank you to my ally who did their best that game, and thank you to our opponents who gave us a nice fun game to cast. So without further ado, guys, thank you. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. If you like this kind of content, let me know in the comments down below. I will be reading those, and I look forward to casting a lot more Total War games, whether that be in Total War 2 or hopefully all the way through Total War Warhammer 3. So, okay. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day.